So with that, we must move on. What have we got next? Let's have a look. We have got our first word from the sponsor on the panel is from Seaborn. So with any luck, Andy Bax's voice should appear out of nowhere and be able to talk to this slide. Andy, are you out there?
I am indeed. How you doing, Dom?
Wonderful. Yes, very well. So we're going to push your slide up and ask you to talk for a couple of minutes before we go into the panel. Tell us about Seaborn.
Absolutely. So first of all, thanks again for having us on. Always enjoy these conversations. So Seaborn, we recognize infrastructure is really important to delivering content. And, throughout the Americas, we are building a resolute network. It's already underpinned by two subsea cable systems that we have huge amounts of capacity on. We operate CDS2, which goes from New York to Sao Paulo in Brazil. But we've got a much larger platform across the Americas now with our IP network it's tailored towards our end users in terms of ISPs, but it's specifically designed around delivering content too. And that's really important. But I think just to kick this off, what we have seen this year on the back of a really struggling 18 months for the region, and still a struggle, by the way. We should not forget that there are still, plenty of folks in the Americas struggling with the pandemic and trying to get through that. But what we're seeing on the back end of that now is a real boom in the last 3 or 4 months in terms of new projects around regional connectivity. And that's super important. Regional connectivity is going to drive greater take-up of content, greater involvement of populations around content. So, at Seaborn, we're really excited about not only building the express paths that get content into regions, but also distributing that content through regional networks. And there's an awful lot in the Americas going on around that right now, which is super exciting for us. So with that, Dom, we can get going. Now you're muted.
Yeah, you see somebody muted me as well. I didn't even have to ring the bell, but we got getting wild on the meeting there. So thank you for that for that word from our sponsors. And let me just retitle that. So we're now moving on to our panel on energy, submarine, fiber, and carrier interconnect. So this is the point where you grab your snorkel and we're going down into the seabed to understand what's going on actually in this real physical telco infrastructure. We have joining us, well, obviously Andy Bax, the COO of Seaborn. We've got Elsa Pine, the Vice President of Sales and Business Development for EdgeConneX. Give us a wave, Elsa.
Hello.
Perfect. Hi, Elsa. Wonderful to have you back. And we've got Gil Santaliz, CEO of NJFX. Gil, are you out there?
I am. Good morning from the East Coast.
Perfect. Great. Okay. Well, listen, we're going to kick right in because we're so under pressure, and I do want to keep the content going. And I've got a great sort of opening question. Where are we overall in the cycle of subsea cable refresh? I think, Andy, you touched on this a little bit. Gil, this is your question. I'm going to start with Gil. Gil, where are we in the cycle of subsea cable refresh?
So it's a fascinating time because 20 years ago, a lot of the cables that went in the water are now going to their maturation. They're really reaching their physical as well as their economic end of life. But as I look at the new systems coming on board, I am fascinated to see that they're now going from what used to be 2-pair, 4-pair, 8-pair. They're going to 24-pair systems in and out of the water, which means the amount of capacity we're talking about is petabytes at this point. So the world has gotten a lot smaller because subsea's gotten a lot stronger, and the amount of capacity going around is incredible. The only nuance, they need a lot of power. Because think of it this way, the old cable landing stations with 2-pair, 4-pair, okay, 24-pair, it's a megawatt of juice. So it's an exciting time to have good infrastructure in the space.
I'm glad you brought up power. It's one of my favorite topics here. So Elsa, we've always come to you when we mention power. And so tell us about what's going on the edges. How's the pandemic changed things above all? We shouldn't.
I just want to make sure it's very clear that the edge is here. I have never had it busier than this past year. And whether that's the CDNs or let's just say their partner customers in the content world, it is all about performance, and performance will trump price every darn time. I think we've all experienced that this year as users at our own home / office / team meetings with a family of 5 or however many are in your house. But it's it's been absolutely insane. There's pockets that we can't secure enough space and power for. There's a lot of land banking going on. There's power discussions being had at all levels, and we are going to the 25 to 50 to 100 kilowatts per cabinet. We're seeing it happen now, and it is definitely happening at the edge. They are moving their compute to the edge. They have to support their end users, and those end users are all of their partners. So you can't get it all there unless everyone is all there together. So these are interactive applications that are they are demanding a lot of power. They're demanding a lot of connectivity, and we're seeing a need to expand everywhere, where we are and where everybody else is. We don't solve it for everybody, but I know nobody solves it for everybody. Like your first slide said, there's more than one CDN, there's more than one data center out there, but it's just how quickly can we get everything together, connected, and up and running so that we can have a great live music session, like on Sessions. They can't even do a concert because there's not enough connectivity. So they're allowing only a certain amount of people into a concert on a live venue, on a Saturday night. So I don't know, everybody's got different opinions, but it's never been busier.
Andy, what are you finding of the challenges? It seems power's dominating the story at the moment. Is cable landing station locations still tricky? Are there regulatory challenges? What are the key things that are the challenges?
I think we've kind of, over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a move away from, a cable system is all about power, just like a data center, just like an edge platform. It's all about power. Lives and breathes by power and cooling. And what we've seen and what we're doing now is moving what we call subsea in the edge. So it's not quite the same fine and wonderful stuff that the guys in the content distribution world are doing, but we're moving all of our delivery platforms to the edge of our networks. So, and they are major data centers, but what it means is we're basically passing straight through the data center, straight through the cable station. So we're delivering capacity, connectivity, and especially on the express routes, straight to major data center hubs. I think it's an interesting question is as I always do on these panels, I talk about the Americas, and I say, it's a different animal to North America, to Europe. It's very similar to, in some respects, to Africa and parts of Asia, where the edge for a lot of content owners and distributors is a country still. It's still getting into a country. They don't have a presence there, whether it be a corporate presence or a technical presence. So delivering content efficiently and with a high enough performance, for a lot of content owners today is still coming from the US, and obviously that's not a preference. That's not where they want to be. So, moving our connectivity platforms further and further into the countries is helping there. It's making that possible. But I always come back to the same point. It's all well and good having an express cable with low latency, but if your service latency between the content owner and the end user is still horrible, you could have the shortest cable in the world, but it makes no difference. If you've got to go through 19 hops to get to an end user when you get to the end, you're not solving a problem. So more and more now we see in our little space in the world, in subsea cables, it's not just about connectivity. It's also about, core capacity. It's also about IP connectivity as well. So you see a lot of cable operators more and more now are, they're providers just like Seaborn. We are at Seaborn, providers of a regional IP network to support content delivery with low service latency, really adjacent networks, deep connectivity. That's the key. And again, as Elsa just mentioned, not one person can do it on their own. No, we can't solve that. We got to solve it collectively. All the operators have to solve that collectively, whether you're a subsea cable, terrestrial network, data center, regional provider that's reaching further and further into the countries they operate in. It's all got to work together. Otherwise, it doesn't actually work. It doesn't fix a problem.
So with these these challenges, I think back to perhaps 2002, 2003, when I think it was Global Crossing that started to light up and caused really quite a significant, among others, and caused quite a significant glut in capacity at the time. And that really changed the pricing in the CDN space fundamentally. Now, fast forwarding sort of 20 years, we are seeing other pressures other than pure capacity. Well, it sounds like to me from what you guys are saying, when we put a link in, there's huge capacity on those links, but getting those links in, getting them powered is a challenge. What are we going to see for pricing within this space over the next 2 to 5 years? Gil, what's your thoughts on that?
We're seeing today the desire for the largest CDNs to continue to have owner economics. They're here at the landing station, they're operating fibers, they're getting spectrum on systems. They are actively involved in how the systems are being managed. We're seeing the big eyeball networks arriving at the cable landing station, working with big enterprises to kind of do their own CDN application, because realize that if a big bank can't communicate with its employees during a COVID period, they're going to be out of business, right? So you've seen the enterprise kind of enable themselves to get that content out there. And you've gotten to start to see also the eyeball networks want to get to those banks and get to those networks. So you're seeing efficiencies, and the answer is owner economics. Only way you get owner economics, you've got to be the cable landing station. You've got to operate. You have to have know-how. You've got to get down to the bare minimum cost. And that's what we're seeing from these folks. They're driven on price. They want performance. Failure is not an option. I want to eliminate hops. I want efficiencies. And that's why we have internet exchanges now that are sitting at the landing station. DKIX at the landing station, NetIX at the landing station, Verizon at the landing station, Lumen. There's 27 networks now at the landing station. And luckily, we built it for high density. 25 kW, Elsa, I'm not sure I can do 25 kW. It's a big step up, but I can do 16 to 20 for sure. But I'm impressed with 25 kW.
We're seeing a demand to go to a 50 to 100 cab, and that's immersion cooling.
So is that water-based cooling? Is that water? How do you do 50 water-based cooling?
We are discussing and we're working with customers to figure out how to do that. It is engineeringly possible. It is difficult, but talk about supply and chain demand. Everybody's out of everything. So everybody has to wait 9 months. I mean, I got to say, cost isn't becoming an issue right now. It's performance, and they'll do anything to get to the next customer will do the exact same thing as the other to get to the edge or just get in and be operating and running. But you're looking now at a 9 to 12 month lead time on some of this gear, and it is causing major bottlenecks. We are just now going to see the internet melt, and I firmly believe that we've hit choking points last year. This is the year. It's questionable. It doesn't matter if we're all getting to the landing station. Everyone's got to get the content somewhere, and quite frankly, everybody's a little behind, and they don't all have the resources. And quite frankly, it is the people. Nobody can go to an own data center right now because they don't have the people to hire.
So this is an interesting topic for me. You guys probably remember at the last CDS we had Dave Crowley, who was kind of key with Microsoft rolling out the Maria fiber.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him the year before and just chewing the fat at the end of a conference about where the capacity limitations are for content delivery. And he said it's about where you can find that juncture of access to a metro zone, access to capacity, and access to power. And so this is a bit of a question for all you guys. So in that context, where's the tail and where's the dog here? Who's wagging the tail? Is the tail wagging the dog? Who's got the control in this? Are we waiting for the power provisioning? Are people waiting for commitment from investment into both sides of the provisioning and the power? Where's the control in the market? Andy, where are you finding that?
Well, I think if you look in the region where we operate, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of new data center builds projects underway, not just in planning but underway. And as Elsa said, there are delays. There are delays right now, as a result of the pandemic, but also supply chain. But there are and just basic raw construction materials in some places, just because there's been no manufacturing of that type of material for quite some time. But there are lots of those projects underway right now. I actually think it's a really interesting question, because I think there's two levels of cooperation now. There's the really big OTT content owners, and as Gil said, key for them is ownership economics. You know, they need to own infrastructure, including subsea cables, and either in entirety, and in some cases we're seeing that now, the larger guys actually owning an entire cable just for them, or huge amounts of fiber pairs in 24 fiber pair cable systems. They're taking the vast majority of them. But we're still cooperating with them. They still need, you know, collaboration from operators. They still need network connectivity. They still need, you know, installation and maintenance type services to be done. So we're working together with as an industry, collaboratively between network operators and the large hyperscalers. I think the really interesting conversation is around, and I hate to diminish them, but it's like the next tier. It's the next tier of content owner and distributor, where ownership economics doesn't necessarily make sense for them in cable systems, probably not even in data centers, but they're looking for a model where they can enter new markets that they're not in today. So, you know, throughout the Americas, almost every country comes into that bracket for these folks. They have content that people want to see. They're delivering it remotely today. They don't have scale today. They know they're going to, at some point in the future, they're going to have scale and they're going to want ownership economics. Right now, they need a partnership model where between them and the network operators, we can support them better than, you know, you go back, like you said, you go back 20 years as an industry, subsea cable operators did a really crappy job of supporting who are today the hyperscalers. And in some regards, that was a fractious relationship for a while. They went their own way. We've kind of come back together again now as an industry, but it's important that we don't make that same mistake for the next tier. Because it's so much bigger. You know, there's like 100 of these guys that are desperate to get into these markets. If we don't get that relationship right and cooperate properly and support them, to Elsa's point, content's not going to get there. And they can't build their own today. They're not big enough, but they will be in the future.
So here's a question for all three of you guys. We're talking about America, about Northern Europe infrastructure and so on and so forth. Talking about emerging economies, you know, these challenges will presumably be that much more complex in emerging economies. From your general knowledge of your sector, because you're at the end of the day, you're the experts in the room today. From your general knowledge of the sector, where are the emerging economies expanding significantly with their cable systems? Where are the places to look to next for provision of infrastructure? I put that to all of you, whichever of you jumps first.
I'll take it that India and South America are two of the biggest ones, and there's no way a customer of ours, even the most sophisticated customers of ours, are doing this on their own. They need partnerships, and we are helping them, but we're not the only ones doing it. And quite frankly, if you think about all of those users, and this has been a year of hell for a lot of us, we've kind of gone backwards in a way, right? Like, we're relying on our connectivity across a computer to have a Zoom meeting to get things done that we normally would have flown an entire team to get to. Now we're kind of, okay, well, what can we piecemeal this together with right now, just to get to that state so that we don't blow it all up before we can build it. And when you ask where we're going, Dom, it's the speed of a butterfly's wings, and we can't even support that right now. So good luck to everyone collectively here trying to fix this, because this has been the year of eye-opening technologies that we are finally talking about, things that we did not even dream about 5 years ago.
Gil, I saw your hand go up. Go for it.
So I appreciate Elsa's comments on the LATAM market being one of the most important markets developing, but there's issues in LATAM in terms of, people will tell you, right, the cost. The taxes are 100% on the gear you bring down there. Building a building, good luck. Not easy building a building in LATAM. It's not an easy market, and the pandemic is thriving in parts of LATAM. So connectivity can solve these issues. We've got super high scale compute in Northern Europe that's a cross connect away from Andy's cable. So you can take any LATAM issue and you can process it in Norway, Denmark, Ireland, and have it down within, some less than a second, obviously, a couple of milliseconds, you're down in LATAM. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but until Elsa and the rest of the industry figure out how to build effectively in markets you can't build in, the cables are there. It's a cross-connect away. It's one hop between Norway, Denmark, Ireland, and Sao Paulo. And Andy's got a great cable. The Hot Fruit guys have a great cable. We make connectivity solve these issues. The other point I wanted to mention, and I'll let Andy finish, is Andy's right. It's about efficiencies, and he mentioned security. It can't be more secure than an international cable landing station in the U.S. Why? The U.S. cares. We've seen our fair amount of scares in the last 12 months, the last 1 month. The U.S. is paying attention now to cable landing station data integrity. They don't want to see mistakes happen, and we're paying attention to how these networks all interconnect together. So keeping it pure, keeping it subsea, I think is a good way to go.
Andy, did you have a comment there?
Absolutely. I think, as I started off the conversation, infrastructure is important. But I think what's really important is to Elsa's point, that there's going to be a window now where even though things are starting to open up in certain places, we are not going to be able to ramp up as quickly as what we need to, in all honesty. In terms of physical infrastructure, proper environment, secure environment, in some cases connectivity, although a lot of that has been going on. We've seen more within the Americas, we've seen more regional connectivity programs going on the last 18 months and probably for the last 5 years. So that's gone on. But there's still infrastructure to build. There's still an environment to house this content. And I think the important bit over the next 6 to 12 months is going to be enabling those content owners and distributors to get into those markets in a model that enables them to grow. It's not going to restrict them. They don't have to set up and establish their own footprint there, because in all honesty, if you're not there today, you're not going to be there in 6 months' time. You're not going to set up a presence and get your entity set up. Not right now, the way things are going in the Americas. But network operators, folks like Gil, folks like us down in the region, we are there and we can help, and we do have space, power, environment, connectivity that we can support them with and get them through the next. Not on a misunderstanding that that's always what they're going to do. But get through this next 6 to 12 months, let them grow, let them get into those markets, bring the connectivity that people in the region want. They absolutely want it. And then to one last point, Dom, I think one last critical point is you look at where there isn't development right now. I think that's important. Central America, Caribbean, no development whatsoever for the last 20 years. It's bereft of not even subsea cables. You look at a map of the world, cables everywhere. There's a big gaping hole. Central America and Caribbean, 60 million people, 30 different countries. If that was a European country, we'd be building fiber to every one of those cities. But because it's the Caribbean, we're not.
I was just down in St. John this past weekend, and I cannot tell you, I was there before the hurricanes, and everyone's only in St. John. You can't get over the BVIs. They'll charge you $10,000 if you cross the water. Everyone's sitting in one central area in St. John. The connectivity is awful. And yet I'm sitting there snorkeling under the water, looking for pipes, the underground cables, to see if I find anything amongst these caves, because I could not believe how bad the coverage is. And we've got children down there trying to do school. We've got people that want content. You can't tell me that they're building for the next 6 to 12 months and keeping it that way. We are only going to be building this for the future. There's families down there that move there just to get away from the States and stay there, and they're doing schooling remotely. So everyone is in need of this. Never mind telemedicine. We've just jumped 10 years since last year's call. And I, for one, have had at least 30 telemedicine visits with a doctor. Everything has changed. We're not changing this temporarily. This is the future. We have never seen it like this before, and we are building for the future. And these applications and AI is really what's going to drive all this. And it's not going to be a temporary fix. It's forever.
Cool,
We just have to bridge that gap between now and then. We got to keep it going. Like Elsa said, it can't break. People have got used to it now. They rely on it.
But
We cannot let it break because scale gets us down.
I hate to say this, but I think we're challenged, right? You're not going to have infrastructure built at the rate it was built before.
No.
12 to 18 months. It's not. You're not getting data centers built in the.
There's no gear. There's no gear. They're trying. It's 12 months out minimum, and even if you're the big buyers, there's no gear. There's a waiting period.
You've got the haves and the have-nots. If you have it, congratulations, sit put, right? But if you don't have it, you got to come back. Vacation is over. You're not going to be able to work from the Caribbean. My employees are not going to the Caribbean. If you guys are listening, you got to work from New Jersey or somewhere in the main states.
One of the things I love about this panel is when we begin the Content Delivery Summit, I know because of our close association with streaming media, I know a lot of people turn up to tune in to understand about HLS video delivery or about video compression and caching strategies and so on. And I love starting the day talking about subsea fiber and cable connection because it's not part of the ecosystem that people naturally think of. But when you realize the pressures on that base level of infrastructure and the top level services are creating, it really brings it home how we do have to work as a complete ecosystem. So I wanted to just finish. We've got 4 minutes left. I've got a question in from Indra. There's a number of questions, so we can't take them all. And in fact, I'd ask the panelists if you get a chance to just jump in the chat and type a few answers. But Indra asked an interesting early question, which is what percentage of efforts are private partnerships? What include philanthropy? And where is the investment coming from? I mean, typically, cable infrastructure investment has been some of the most far-sighted investment that I think you can get in terms of futures markets and so on. Where is this investment coming from? What are the main actors playing in this space at the moment?
It's Facebook and it's Google. They're the biggest operators when it comes to subsea cables.
Facebook.
Investors in those subsea cables.
For the express routes, that's absolutely true, Don. For the express routes between the major data hubs, it's the hyperscalers. For the other 90% of the world that needs connectivity and connections to those, it's the same old story. It's the same old story of a mixture of kind of virtual consortiums, not the old consortium models, but co-builds, joint builds, a lot of private equity investment now. It is, like you said, it's a long-term strategy. It's not a 3-year, 5-year return. It's a 10-year plan. You got to put together a 10-year plan on this stuff. But there's an awful lot of investment out there. If nothing else, this last 18 months has shown the entire world how important this critical infrastructure is. I know we say it tongue in cheek sometimes, but data centers, power, building out the data centers, building out the subsea cables, we do really build the internet. Everybody else uses it.
Absolutely. So we've got 2 minutes, and the last quick question to all of you to help us link it into the rest of the sort of CDN space. So latency is a big keyword in the CDN space. I wonder if that's actually usually propagation delay in the cable world. But talk to me a little bit about latency challenges and where you guys see ways we can optimize in the face of latency challenges. Gil, can I start with you? I'm going to take just a quick minute from 30 seconds from each to try to get through the session. So Gil.
Latency is efficiency. Efficiency means the least amount of hops. You've got to get to that core network. Get to those cables as fast as you can. Get the residential networks to talk to the long subsea networks in one place, and you've got your efficiency and you've got your latency. That's how you solve the issue.
Perfect. Elsa, your view on the latency challenges and so on.
I'll say that always comes down to performance, and our expert clients know exactly what they have to do to fill those gaps of latency, and that's put a presence. And whether that's a physical presence or a virtual presence, it's they know where their pockets are of where things are dropping. Clients are very quick to tell them that they need it. So we're doing our best.
Perfect. And Andy?
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely, I'd second what both Gil and Elsa just said, but also just reiterate, it has got nothing to do with physical latency. It's all about service latency. What's the gap between me as the content owner and the end user trying to use it? So it's all about adjacency.
Listen, I love this panel. It's always a brilliant start to CDS. Elsa and Gil, Andy, thank you so much. Andy, thank you so much for being a sponsor on the panel as well. Much appreciated. I wish I could ask for a round of applause, but I'm going to give you one anyway. Thank you so much, everyone. And
thanks, Tom.
pop into the chat room.
Nice to see you, Elsa. Nice to see you, Gil.
There's some questions in the chat room for you guys, so do hopefully answer a few hanging questions and keep asking them if you're out there asking them.
All right.